Copact's Dynamic Duo series, where results are guaranteed. Johann on managing partner of Quest AI. Your background and journey.
It started in the 90s during the dot-com boom. I got my first job basically not knowing anything about programming, which was great. It forced me to go and self-learn and study. A couple of years later, I went back to school, got the formal education to back up everything, and got into AI and data science about 15 years ago during the whole boom, with big data and Hadoop and everything becoming more popular. And then just serendipity, I had a friend that her brother was a philosophy professor that was teaching computer science students. And I'm like, wait a second, what's going on here? So that introduced me into, a lot more of how we're using computers to think like humans and analyze data. So before it was a lot of machine learning, just algorithms churning through data. But if you talk about AI, it's not just machine learning. It's actually truly telling you something you didn't know, something that infer from the data versus just getting all the data together and summarizing it. So that kind of started my journey down, going down AI, data science. Went back to school again. Was fortunate to go to Northwestern to go get a data science degree. And, from there, did a lot of consulting, worked for Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies, and mostly helped them getting AI into production. It's amazing how challenging that could be.
Where does AI stop and start, and kind of where do you see it evolving into in our society, our technology, our day to day lives? Kind of how would you want a novice in the AI world to think about it, and how would you help them kind of understand your space?
And the easiest way to explain it is just, it's like electricity, right? We don't think about it anymore. If you think 100 years ago, you had to think about electricity. But today we don't. We just plug something in and it works, right? That is how I see AI, really where the value comes from, where you don't think about it. Also, you don't get, electrocuted. So there needs to be safety measures in place. But we're in that beginning stages, getting there. It's not there yet where we can just turn it on and it's ready to go. So it's definitely a transformative technology, because if you look at up until this point in history, everything that's pushed us forward as far as technology was driven by human decisions, right? This is the first technology where the actual technology can make decisions by itself. And therefore, there's definitely dangers and things that you have to think about. But I'm very much for the more I know, the better I'm going to perform. So I try and be as educated as I can about the limitations, the capabilities, and it's also my goal. When we work with clients, what's the expectations? What's realistic to do with what you have as far as data, infrastructure, and what's the hype? And that's something that right now where it seems like we've been for the last 2 years on that hype cycle, and it's not getting better.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I've never heard the analogy of AI and electricity, but I really like it. You don't think about how electricity gets to you, and eventually I agree, will be so woven into our lives, our careers, our day to day that it'll just be there, and it'll just be helping, supporting, and hopefully making us much more. Love to hear the organization's mission, expertise.
The most difficult positions that I couldn't find good candidates for, he would always show up and always have good candidates. And it was always a partnership where I would give him extremely detailed feedback, something he said he never got. But to me, it was always the partnership. If I'm going to use a recruiter to go and get me a resource, I need to tell him what was good, what was bad, what I'm looking for. It's a partnership and data science, because there's two reasons for that. One, it's very difficult finding really good qualified people that can, like I said, get AI into production. The second thing is, once you have really good talented people, keeping them is not easy, because they're typically highly performant. They get bored quickly. If you give them a challenge a month or two in, that's great. 6 months to a year, 5 years, almost never, they're gonna move on. I'm like that, so I get it. So we're like, okay, those are two things that we can probably solve if we formed a company that focuses just around AI, data science, machine learning, and they can come in, set up the systems and everything, and then have a DevOps person or a systems engineer manage that going forward. So we look at it very similar to that, where we go in, we help companies get up and running. Maybe it's their first AI project. So we lead them through the process, even the project management of it. A lot of times companies are very well versed in agile practices or waterfall. But then we introduce machine learning and they're like, whoa, why? This is different, right? And it's because it's experimentation. It's not guaranteed that you can have an outcome, a product at the end. So how do we make it predictable so you're not going over budget, going over time? Well, we have a process called crisp DM. Not something I invented, but it is something that at Northwestern they were teaching us. So we apply that 6 phases and we go through those 6 phases. And one thing that is different from how we do it at Quest AI is that during the first 2 phases, it's the data and the business understanding. We typically would go and look at what are the actual business expectations and do you have the data to support that, and we match that. And during that first 2 stages, we can very quickly determine, can we actually get to an end result in this project before we even finish up the project? And very few companies do that. And I think it's a miss, because if you don't have the data or there's no algorithms out there and you have to start from scratch, those are limiting factors, and that's going to affect how quickly and how successfully you can get into production. So we always look at it from that point of view. So just in short, Jason and I clicked. He was really good at getting me good people that, we could basically create an agency around. We can go and help our clients very quickly get to a result. And then what we also do is we typically partner either with the client or we'll partner with maybe Capgemini, KPMG, one of these big consulting firms to take it over and scale it. We don't want to be the 1,000-person company that's going to be there for the next 5 years. Like I said before, we want to solve really hard, challenging projects and then be able to hand it off and have somebody own their own IP.
One of the top reasons I wanted to work, and I'm proud to have Quest AI as a part of the group, is it's truly business focused with AI enablement compared to the other way around where a lot of hype is going of, oh, everything should be AI. No, you need a business process, you need an end outcome, and you need results to drive it. And I think you guys are a great point at the very starting point of that journey to help be that accelerator, to be that strategist and that architect that has been there and done that. And then they can take it internally, they can get external resources to help scale it. But you guys are really in that initial discovery and enablement phase very early, which is so valuable just to get people moving in some momentum.
Very few companies have the budget to just explore. And, just an anecdotal quick story. A couple of years ago, an office supply company approached us and, they wanted to engage, data scientists. And I went on their website and I saw that they've been hiring nonstop for like 6 months trying to fill data science positions. And they have about 20. So first question I ask is, who's leading the team? And they're like, oh, it's the business intelligence guys, they rolled it under that team. I'm like, it's not going to work. And the reason is I used to work for that company, so I know the infrastructure and the organization. But not just that, it takes leadership. And this is something a lot of times we start with at Quest, is that leadership component, almost like a fractional CTO, where we bolt onto the organization. But our focus is AI and data science and how you build organizations. And very rarely do you find just sprinkling data scientists on a project that you can solve it if you don't have the leadership. So we fill that position as well from the beginning. How do we think about the strategy? How do we actually find real ROI? And when I mention our 6 phases, I want to say 80-90% of the time we'll do like a proof of concept to begin with. That's low cost, very quick, either it's like the typical Silicon Valley. We fail fast or we learn fast, right? But we don't want to spend 6 months finding out, no, this wasn't a good idea. We really want to get to what's the value that we can derive from this. And if we have a base model or we have something that we can actually move into production, that's a bonus, right? So yeah, definitely ROI is big.
Great point. And I would always take advantage of an expert that has been there and done that over just trying to figure it out in the wild, wild west. Segue. So Quest AI is a copact impact guaranteed partner. How do you think about impact guarantee when it comes to AI and machine learning? And with such experimentation, how does Quest AI differentiate itself with an impact guarantee?
I can tell you the philosophy that we have. First of all, ROI is important. And I'm going to give you another example, right? This is from a couple of years ago. One of the cruise lines came to us and asked us, hey, we've spent a decent amount of money already and we're getting a quote. It's going to be another couple of $1 million to implement a very easy system that counts people. And if you've been on a cruise, those buffet areas, they want to move people around. They don't want everybody to cluster in one area. So they ask us, how would you solve this? And we basically took the problem, looked at it, evaluated, see what do they have available. Now you have to remember, with cruise ships, you don't have the internet, guaranteed. So you can't have cloud computing. So you have to have local computing. The second thing is, if you're going to retrofit cameras for computer vision, you have to dry dock these ships. That's almost a no-starter. It's not going to happen, right? So you're limited to security cameras, onboard computing. So we looked at that and we basically came up with a plan. How can we count people? And it was like, we don't have to do facial recognition. All we have to do is label data that can count heads. And if you've ever worked with security cameras, those fisheye, they're challenging, because if you just think you're gonna create a regular model that's gonna count people's heads, you're not, because the heads get elongated as they get close to the sides. So we had 3 models that we implemented to kind of account for that. About 5,000 data points, and we got the project implemented on the first ship within about 3 months. Cost was around $250,000 with labeling and labor and everything. And we're like, all right, here's the project, here's the proof of concept, we're ready to implement it. They were blown away. And we're like, why? And they're like, well, here's the quote that we got that we wanted to kind of compare. We had to dry dock the ships to implement these cameras. That's state of the art. We had to use cloud, and this is before, everybody had, what's it, Tesla, Starlink. Everybody had Starlink access. There was, cruise ships now do, but they didn't have it back then. So there was a lot of limitations around it, but that's what they got. And the price tag was about $2 million. So we're like, how is that possible? So the reason I like telling that story is that is our philosophy. When you think about impact, to your point, how do we make impact very quickly, low cost? Because the chances of early success is always going to be much better getting those bigger projects. If we just jump to the big project and we're like, all right, we want to have 15 people on this project for the next 4 years. Nobody wants to, put their career on, a bet that's not guaranteed. So we help our clients, and hopefully with impact, we're going to do exactly the same. Get our clients to very quickly see success or learn. A lot of times, like you said in the beginning, AI might not always be the right choice, and we'll be very transparent. If else statement is good enough, we're good to go. State machine, good enough, don't need AI. But if you do, how do you get there in a predictable and also a very low cost with high return kind of project? And that's where I see us really differentiating ourselves from other companies, and also just through pain. I mean, this is something we've done enough times to learn how to get there without all of the obstacles that we've seen, and we still learn. This is one of the benefits also of having short term and a lot of different projects. We're not focused on one industry, because we're at that layer where it's all about modeling and algorithms and deployments and scaling. So it's a technical stack versus a business stack. And
Partnership model is so valuable in my experience of having partners that want to get you that quick win, pilot, learn, but are willing to articulate and work with you and collaborate to create that long-term vision in parallel. And that's where the true magic happens, when you get those quick wins on the path to the long-term vision. And there's not many partners out there that do it well today. What should they know about Quest AI?
So we definitely are focused on a lot of custom development, right? But we also do, like I said, leadership and that fractional CTO role where we focus on AI and machine learning. One thing that I've seen over the last 2 years, specifically with OpenAI and Microsoft and everybody jumping on it, is that you don't need a lot of custom software anymore. A lot of times it's about picking the right tools. And this goes back to the company that I was mentioning before that I worked for, the office supply company. Our VP at the time told us, we're in the business of selling pencils. We're not in the business of writing software. And it kind of stuck with me, because that's the business problem we're trying to solve. So all the technology that you bring into the organization need to support what's your prime directive. If it's selling pencils, sell pencils. If it's, don't build software unless you have the budgets of Meta and, these big companies. That's a different game, but most companies don't. They want to sell their product and do their business. So it's challenging for CTOs, it's challenging for CFOs. It's all of these folks are being asked, how are we using AI to leverage, and make our business more profitable or productive? And I would always say, get familiar with the tools out there. Microsoft, they're implementing Copilot into everything. Google with Gemini is doing the same. So I would start there. Look, what is there? Now, there's going to be vendor lock-in. There's going to be a lot of things that happens with that, which you should be used to if you're already dealing in enterprise software. But when it comes to solving custom problems and engaging somebody like us, there's definitely a need for that, but not every problem. It has to be something where you feel the IP that you get from doing that is something that's a differentiator and something that makes your company different from your competitors. Maybe in the beginning you use OpenAI services to demonstrate you have a great idea. But if you're asking somebody for money, you have to have a really good plan and a roadmap how you're going to get out of that that lock-in. So two kind of different advices for the small startup versus enterprises, but it boils down to value. In the end, there has to be some value.
This is Copact's Dynamic Duo series, where results are guaranteed.